In the moons after the shooting, the world around Crazy Horse begins to shift in ways no one can ignore. Old alliances strain, new pressures rise, and the northern plains grow more uncertain by the day. As the Lakota face choices that will shape their future, Crazy Horse finds himself standing at the crossroads of loyalty, leadership, and destiny. This episode follows the quiet turning of a man and a nation, as both are pushed toward decisions that will echo far beyond their camps. Welcome to Chronicles of the Old West. This is Episode 5 of Spirit of the Thunder People, the life of Crazy Horse.
The memory of the gunshot still clung to him. Even weeks after No Water's pistol roared inside that teepee, Crazy Horse could feel the heat of the muzzle flash, the sting of powder burning into his flesh, the sudden collapse of the world into pain and darkness. He had survived, barely, but the wound had carved more than a scar across his jaw. It had carved a fault line through the Oglala world. And now, as the moon of Making Fat opened and the bands drifted toward Rawhide Butte, Crazy Horse lay in a mini Conju lodge, jaw bound in poultices, listening to the muffled arguments outside. His warriors wanted blood. No Water's people wanted protection. And the fragile peace Red Cloud was building trembled like a lodgepole in a rising wind. Crazy Horse could not speak clearly, but he could hear everything, and he knew the storm was not over. The shooting had nearly torn the tribe apart. Messengers rode hard through the darkness, spreading the panicked, premature word that Crazy Horse had been killed. Warriors scoured the valley for No Water, their fury rising with every hour he remained hidden. As he Dog later recalled, for a while it looked as if a lot of blood would flow. And truly, it might have. The camps were trembling on the edge of a civil war. Only the steady, deliberate work of Spotted Crow, Ashes, Bullhead, and Touch the Clouds kept the people from turning on one another. They hosted feasts, soothed tempers, and urged restraint. They reminded both sides that once Lakota blood was spilled by Lakota hands, there would be no easy return. Gradually, painfully, arguments cooled. Gifts were offered. Diplomacy took root, and at last a settlement was reached. But the cost was steep. Crazy Horse was forced to relinquish Black Buffalo Woman, not because he wished to, but because the alternative was open conflict between entire bands. He insisted only that No Water never harm her again. The council agreed. Spotted Crow's men escorted her home, and Bad Heart Bull added his personal guarantee of her safety. With that, the affair was formally closed, though private feelings still smoldered beneath the surface. Yet the wound beneath Crazy Horse's bandages throbbed with more than pain. It throbbed with consequence. The chiefs convened to address the deeper offense, the breach of moral duty expected of a shirt wearer. Their verdict was inevitable. Crazy Horse must return the sacred shirt. He had broken the code that governed the tribe's most honored leaders. He did not argue. His days of reflection had already prepared him for this moment. He stepped into the council lodge, placed the shirt before the elders, and said simply, "I'd rather be a plain warrior. I'm not an orator. I'm not a politician." The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of a man shedding a role that no longer fit him. And yet, even stripped of the title, the people still looked to him. The thunder dreamer, wounded, humbled, but unbroken, began to consider what kind of man he would be now, and what path remained for someone who had already walked so close to death. His family urged him toward stability, toward marriage, toward a life that might anchor him. And so, scarcely a month after the shooting, Crazy Horse married Black Shawl. The ceremony was beautiful. The beadwork, the songs, the procession of ponies, the feast that filled Worm's Lodge with laughter and pride. But beneath the celebration lay unease. Crazy Horse still bore the raw scar that pulled his mouth into a grimace. Black Shawl wondered if his heart was truly hers, or if it still wandered toward the woman he had nearly died for. Then the riders came. Their hair was hacked short in mourning. A riderless pony followed behind them, and the wails of Crazy Horse's female relatives filled the camp. Young Little Hawk, Crazy Horse's younger brother, was dead, killed in a skirmish far to the southwest, perhaps by Shoshones, perhaps by settlers, perhaps by both. The details were murky. The grief was not. Crazy Horse wanted vengeance, but he was still recovering, and the chiefs forbade war parties under the new Iwashtala peace policy. So he did the only thing he could. He took Black Shawl on a solitary 150-mile journey to retrieve his brother's bones. It was a strange honeymoon, cold, silent, haunted. They camped in the high timber for 9 days. Crazy Horse searched the mountains, killing several wandering whites, Flying Hawk later said. Black Shawl tended his bandages, learned his silences, and discovered the mystic beneath the warrior. Their marriage, born of duty, began to kindle into something steadier, not passion, but companionship. When they returned, the world had shifted again. Red Cloud had returned from Washington with stories of factories, endless settlers, and railroads that would soon carve the plains into fenced parcels. The chiefs debated for 10 days. The warriors listened, and slowly, reluctantly, a consensus formed. Peace, for now, was the only path. Crazy Horse said nothing. Rumors swirled that he had killed soldiers on his way home, but he neither confirmed nor denied them. He simply withdrew, exhausted, burned out from months of war, heartbreak, and spiritual strain. Then came the council at Bear Lodge. There, before hundreds of chiefs and warriors, Crazy Horse was unexpectedly called forward. The pipe was held to his lips. A war club was placed in his hands. He was proclaimed War Chief of the nation. He had just surrendered the sacred shirt. He had just admitted a moral failing. And yet, weeks later, the nation raised him higher than ever before. Why? Because the two honors measured different things, and the people understood that distinction with absolute clarity. A shirt wearer was chosen for virtue, self-denial, and peacemaking. Crazy Horse broke that vow. The people could not ignore it. But a war chief was chosen for something entirely different. Vision power, fearlessness, tactical brilliance, the ability to protect the people when the world turned dangerous. The Lakota didn't confuse moral purity with battlefield destiny. They knew exactly who Crazy Horse was. Flawed, quiet, solitary, but they also knew no one alive was better at war. When he gave up the shirt, he didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't blame anyone. He simply showed that humility mattered. It showed the council that he wasn't clinging to status. He wasn't hungry for power, and that made him trustworthy in a way few leaders were. The Lakota feared ambitious men far more than flawed ones. And when war returned, they needed the one man who never boasted, never sought glory, never led men into foolish death, and never broke faith, with the vision that protected him. Crazy Horse was the only warrior whose spiritual authority matched his tactical genius. Even his enemies admitted it. Calling him forward was a statement. When the time comes, you will lead us. It was honorary, yes, but symbolic in the deepest Lakota sense. And the people roared because they knew he didn't want the title. He didn't seek the power. He didn't speak for applause. He was chosen because he was the one man who would not betray them when the world collapsed. Crazy Horse's affair cost him a moral office. But it did not erase his vision, his courage, his unmatched skill, and his willingness to die for the people. They weren't looking for a saint. They were looking for a shield. And Crazy Horse, wounded, humbled, stripped of rank, was still the strongest shield they had. But Crazy Horse's spirit was restless. As the leaves turned and the moon of the changing seasons arrived, he gathered 16 men, High Backbone, Good Weasel, Bald-Face Horse, Chasing Crow, and his young brother-in-law, Red Feather, for one last strike against the Shoshones. At the painted cliffs, the ancient petroglyphs warned of disaster. Crazy Horse urged turning back. High Backbone refused. "Yes, we're looking for death," he said. "Let's go." And so they rode on. The attack at dawn was swift and chaotic. They stampeded the Shoshone pony herd, a clean strike at first light. But the victory lasted only moments. 200 Shoshone warriors mounted in furious pursuit, their shouts rolling across the frozen ground. Snow began to fall, thin at first, then thick enough to blur the horizon. The earth turned to slush beneath pounding hooves. Their horses faltered. Their weapons were inferior. And the 16 Lakotas, stretched thin across the plain, were suddenly fighting for their lives. Crazy Horse urged retreat into the mountains, hoping the broken terrain might save them. High Backbone refused again. "If you don't care about your good name, you can go back," he told Crazy Horse, a challenge that cut deeper than any blade. Crazy Horse relented, but he knew the truth. They were up against it. The running battle raged for hours. Warriors were wounded. The line collapsed. The Shoshones pressed harder with every mile. Soon only Crazy Horse, High Backbone, and Good Weasel remained to hold them off, 3 men standing against a tide. Then High Backbone's pony stumbled, shot through the leg. Moments later, High Backbone was surrounded, dragged down, and killed beneath a storm of clubs. The Shoshones, satisfied with the death of a great man, finally broke off the pursuit. Crazy Horse rode back alone into the night, answering Good Weasel's wolf calls, carrying the weight of another brother lost, another piece of his life torn away. Days later, he and Red Feather returned to bury what remained of High Backbone, a skull, and a few scattered bones. Coyotes had taken the rest. The wind carried the smell of winter. The world felt smaller. Red Feather watched him carefully. From that moment, he said, Crazy Horse sought death. Crazy Horse returned to the people changed. Something in him had shifted on that cold mountainside where High Backbone fell. He had lost his status, lost his lover, lost his brother, and now lost his closest comrade, the man who had stood beside him in battle since boyhood, the one warrior whose judgment he trusted as much as his own. The wound in his jaw had healed, but the deeper wounds had not. They traveled with him, silent and heavy, like stones tied to the spirit. The Thunder Dreamer, who once fought with clarity, now carried a shadow inside him. His vision, the one that had guided him since youth, had always been sharp, a straight path through danger. But now the world around him felt tighter, smaller, as if the circle of life the Lakotas had always known was closing in. The buffalo were thinning. The railroads were spreading. Treaties multiplied like weeds. And every council fire seemed to burn with the same uneasy question: how long could the old life endure? Crazy Horse felt it in his bones, the pressure, the narrowing, the sense that the Americans were not simply coming. They were already here, reshaping the land beneath the people's feet. He had stepped down as shirt wearer, but the people still watched him. They still whispered his name. They still looked to him when danger loomed, and that expectation, once a source of strength, now pressed against him like a weight he could not set down. He rode quietly. He spoke little. Even his closest relatives sensed the change. Red Feather, who had watched him bury High Backbone's scattered bones, saw it most clearly. The grief, the guilt, the relentless sense of responsibility. All of it had carved a new hardness into Crazy Horse. The Oglalas did not yet know it, but the choices ahead would divide them forever. And Crazy Horse, carrying his losses like a second shadow, was already walking toward the next storm. Winter had settled hard over the northern plains when the world around Crazy Horse began to come apart. The year was 1870, and no other year in his life would carve so deeply into him. It began with death, and it would end with death, and in between lay the slow, grinding reshaping of a man who had once believed he could outrun sorrow. Young Little Hawk died first, the younger brother he had raised, pushed, protected, and provoked into manhood. The boy had been a mirror of his own youth, reckless where Crazy Horse was calculating, bold where he was quiet. And then High Backbone fell, the mentor, the rival, the friend whose courage had always run just a shade hotter than his own. Together, those two men had formed the constellation by which Crazy Horse navigated the world. Now, both stars winked out, leaving him in a darkness he had never known. Something inside him tightened. A spirit that had once been whole began to contract. He tried to fill the void by guiding his brother-in-law, Red Feather. But Red Feather was not young Little Hawk, and no one could replace High Backbone. The man who had once measured himself against others now had no one left to measure against at all. Yet even in grief, life pressed forward. Black Shawl's belly swelled through the winter, and a fragile hope began to take root. Their marriage had been arranged, a political solution to a scandal, but affection grew slowly between them, a warmth that surprised him. In early 1871, along the Yellowstone, as winter softened toward spring, Black Shawl gave birth to a daughter, a girl. Crazy Horse named her Koki Papi. They are afraid of her after one of his mother's sisters. She resembled him, and the resemblance stirred something deep in him, a sense of continuity, of spirit passed from one generation to the next. He adored her. He watched her crawl among the parfleche cases, chase puppies on all fours, babble nonsense threaded with the bright clarity of Aina and Ate. In those moments, he felt something he had not felt in years. He felt whole. But peace on the plains never lasted long. The wound no water had given him, the bullet that tore his face and left a scar that pulled his mouth downward, still ached in the cold. It was a reminder of the woman they had both loved, Black Buffalo Woman, and the scandal that had nearly torn the Oglala apart. Though the affair never resumed, the bitterness did. Rumors flared again when Black Buffalo Woman gave birth to a daughter with light hair. No proof tied the child to Crazy Horse, but gossip did not need proof. And then fate, mischievous as ever, placed the two men on the same trail. Crazy Horse and Iron Horse were riding home from a buffalo surround when they came upon Moccasin Top, and then, from the opposite direction, a rider on a buckskin racer. Only when the man bolted did Crazy Horse realize who it was. No water. "I wish I had known it," Crazy Horse snapped. "I would certainly have given him a bullet in return for that one he gave me." He leapt onto his horse and gave chase, but no water plunged his mount over a cutbank and into the Yellowstone, escaping south. He never returned to the northern Oglala camp. His departure was more than personal. It exposed a fault line running through the Oglala world. At the center of that widening rift lay the agency, its placement, its promises, and the power it would shift. Red Cloud, fresh from Washington, pushed for accommodation. Others, like Crazy Horse, held to the strict reading of the 1868 treaty. The unceded lands were theirs, and no agency should be placed outside the reservation boundary. By the summer of 1871, the first Red Cloud Agency was established on the North Platte. Many Lakotas drifted toward it, drawn by rations and promises. But others, Hunkpatilas, Miniconjus, Oyupes, returned to the old ways, to the hunting grounds, to Crazy Horse. This was a period of consolidation for him. He served among the Blotahunka, led raids against the Crows, and settled into the rhythms of family life. He was not a hands-on father by modern standards, but he adored his daughter. For a moment, it seemed the world might hold steady. But beyond their lodges, the United States was accelerating its reach, reshaping the land faster than any council could respond. The Union Pacific had already cut the buffalo herds in two. Now, the Northern Pacific threatened to carve the northern plains apart. Surveyors probed the Yellowstone Valley in 1871, and the Lakotas understood immediately what it meant. The railroad would drive the buffalo away. And without the buffalo, the people would die. Spotted Eagle vowed to fight the railroad as long as he lived. Crazy Horse agreed. Even Sitting Bull, who distrusted all agency talk, used the agencies as channels of communication, but Crazy Horse refused even to visit them. By early 1872, the political split reached a breaking point. Red Cloud urged the northern bands to come in. Many did. But Crazy Horse did not. The Hunkpatila Council met again, and each time Yellow Eagle deferred more to Crazy Horse. Eventually, he ceded the honor place entirely. Crazy Horse, quiet, reluctant, uncomfortable in public speech, became chief of the Hunkpatila. When the main Oglala village moved south toward the agency, Crazy Horse turned west instead, toward Powder River. Their 30 lodges broke away, a bitter split that Red Cloud could not mend. Crazy Horse led raids along the North Platte, driving off horses, striking fear into the agency-aligned bands. The tension grew so sharp that even Red Cloud could not hold his village together. By summer, the northern bands gathered at the forks of the Powder River to debate the Northern Pacific. Sitting Bull arrived with his Hunkpapas. Spotted Eagle came from Cheyenne River. Black Twin and He Dog joined from the Oyupes. It was the largest northern council in years. And for the first time, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse stood side by side as the twin pillars of resistance. Sitting Bull, older and heavier with gravitas, took the honor seat. Crazy Horse sat to his left, the guest's place, the position of the second in command. Together, they began shaping a new idea. Waziata Oyate, the Northern Nation. A united front against the railroad. A united front against the United States. In August 1872, scouts reported troops escorting Northern Pacific surveyors along the Yellowstone. Sitting Bull declared, "We'll go out and meet them and warn them off." Crazy Horse and Turning Bear organized the warriors, nearly 1,000 strong. At dawn on August 14th, they confronted Major Eugene Baker's force of more than 350 soldiers and armed civilians. Crazy Horse painted his face white, donned white buckskin, and mounted his horse. Then he charged, a dead run straight across the soldier line, bullets tearing the air around him, dust exploding at his horse's feet. He rode untouched, not to be outdone. Sitting Bull walked alone into the open, sat down, filled his pipe, and smoked as bullets plowed the earth around him. 4 warriors joined him, trembling but unwilling to let their leader sit alone. It was theater. It was defiance. It was a declaration. When the fight ended, only 2 of Baker's men were dead. But the message was clear. The Northern Nation would not yield. The next summer brought a different kind of battle. In July 1873, the Lakotas struck at a Crow village near the mouth of Pryor Creek. The Crows were ready. Rifle pits lined their camp. Horses grazed safely on an island. The 2 sides taunted each other across the creek, trading insults, daring charges, firing sporadic shots. It was almost sport until the Lakotas began to withdraw. The Crows surged forward, hundreds strong, turning the retreat into a rout. Warriors were cut down. Women mutilated the dead. Panic rippled through the Lakota ranks. Crazy Horse and a handful of leaders turned back to hold the line at Fly Creek. His pony was shot through the leg. The animal lurched, and Crazy Horse sprang off, running on foot as crows closed in around him. A fate like High Backbone's seemed certain until Spotted Deer burst through the enemy line. Crazy Horse leapt onto his horse, and together they broke through, reaching the Lakota line, breathless and shaken. The Lakotas rallied, driving the crows back, but the humiliation lingered. Crazy Horse had nearly died, not in a glorious charge, but in a chaotic retreat. He carried that sting with him. Only weeks later, Crazy Horse found himself facing a new enemy, a man whose name would one day be bound to his own, George Armstrong Custer. On August 4th, 1873, Custer led a detachment of the 7th Cavalry up the Yellowstone. Crazy Horse and his scouts prepared an ambush in the timber. A decoy party lured Custer forward. But Custer sensed the trap and pulled back just in time, forming a defensive circle. The fight devolved into sniping, volleys, and attempted charges. Grass fires sputtered in the still air. It was not a decisive battle, but it was the first time the two men, both young, both charismatic, both rising toward legend, measured each other across a battlefield. They would meet again, and the next time, the world would remember it forever. Through all the political turmoil, all the battles, all the shifting alliances, Crazy Horse held one sanctuary, his daughter. She grew through the winter of 1872 to 73, toddling through the lodge, babbling, laughing, clinging to her mother's dress. She was the soft place in his life, the one being he allowed himself to love without restraint. And then she fell ill. The northern plains were merciless to children. Cold, hunger, and disease stalked every camp. Even the strongest families lost little ones to fevers that came in the night and never broke. She did not survive the winter. Her death hollowed him. The small, bright world he had built around her collapsed. Black Shawl wept. Crazy Horse withdrew into himself, the old brooding returning with a vengeance. He had lost his brother, his mentor, his daughter, his peace. And now, the railroad pressed closer. The United States gathered its armies. The northern nation looked to him. The sky above the plains was darkening. And Crazy Horse, wounded, grieving, hardened, stepped forward to meet the storm. The winter wind came down the Powder River country like a blade, cutting through hide, cloth, and bone. In the fall of 1873, Crazy Horse returned to a home that felt hollowed out, a place Frank Gruard would later call desolate. The tiny voice of his daughter, "They are afraid of her," was gone. The teepee felt too large now, too quiet, as if the walls themselves were listening for a child who would never again stir in the night. Crazy Horse and Black Shawl clung to each other in the way only two grieving parents can, wordlessly, instinctively, as if the warmth of one body might keep the other from slipping into the dark. Their people brought food, robes, and gentle words, but grief is a private country. They walked it alone. Black Shawl, always delicate in health, seemed to fold inward. She had been sickly since their courtship, and now sorrow pressed on her like a second illness. She knew her frailty left her husband comfortless at times of deepest crisis, as the old people would later say. Yet she stayed close, steady, a quiet presence. Rumors swirled, as they always did. Old gossip about Crazy Horse's past with Black Buffalo Woman resurfaced. Some whispered of an affair with Shell Blanket Woman, the wife of Stan Straddle. But if Crazy Horse had been truly unhappy, Lakota custom gave him an easy path to leave, beat a drum, throw a stick into the camp circle, and the marriage was over. He never did. Instead, he drew closer to Blackshaw's family, earning their affection and respect. Whatever storms passed between husband and wife, their bond endured. There were moments, small, human moments, that revealed the quiet strength of their partnership. Once, Crazy Horse stole 2 fine mares from Baptiste Big Bat Poirier at Fort Laramie. When Big Bat rode into camp to demand them back, Crazy Horse asked Blackshaw to bring the horses. She refused. She did not want to give them up, Poirier remembered. Crazy Horse insisted. Only then did she lead the mares out, her reluctance almost comical. The 2 men likely shared a smile. Women could be as stubborn as any warrior. But beneath the domestic scenes, something deeper stirred. Crazy Horse was withdrawing into Wasigla, the ascetic mourning that stripped a man down to his spirit. He and Blackshaw gave away everything they owned. His hair was hacked short, his face blackened with soot. He spent long hours alone, thinking of the road ahead, thinking of the visions that had shaped him since boyhood. For months, he stayed apart from politics, apart from the world. But the world would not leave him alone. By January 1874, trouble was boiling at Red Cloud Agency. Thousands of Lakotas had come in for winter rations: beef, flour, beans, coffee, sugar. The rations were never enough. The people exaggerated their numbers to get more. The agent, John J. Saville, tried to enforce a census. Northern visitors demanded guns and ammunition they believed had been promised. When they weren't delivered, warriors rioted, shot up the agency, and seized their own beef issue. The agency police, the Akichita, were powerless. Many were swayed by the Northern warriors' stories of fighting soldiers on the Yellowstone. Tension rose like a storm cloud. Then came the breaking point: the census. The Northern bands refused to be counted unless the guns were released. The standoff grew dangerous. Word of the crisis reached Crazy Horse in his mourning camp. He could no longer remain apart. Lame Deer and Black Shield, Miniconjou deciders, came to lift the mourning. They combed Crazy Horse's hair, washed off the black paint, and replaced it with sacred red. They gave robes, food, and horses. Though you have come up against troubles, the chief said, weep over her only so much. Good men and friends have you eat. Grief had to give way to duty. Crazy Horse returned to the political world just as the situation exploded. Kicking Bear, his cousin, shot the agency clerk, Frank Appleton. Northern warriors threatened to destroy the agency. In a council of 250 chiefs and warriors, Crazy Horse stood and spoke only a few words, but they were enough to change the course of history. He declared for war. The agency Oglalas were stunned. Saville wired his superiors. Crazy Horse is on the warpath. The army responded with overwhelming force. 8 companies of cavalry, 8 of infantry, Gatling guns, and 120 wagons marched out of Fort Laramie. They established permanent posts, Camp Robinson and Camp Sheridan, right in the heart of Lakota country. The army was not leaving. The invasion forced Crazy Horse and Black Twin, once rivals, to reconcile. For years, they had circled each other warily, but now they stood together. The Northern Oglalas needed unity. Crazy Horse began shaping a new kind of leadership. He saw the limitations of the old warrior societies, fractured by agency politics. Inspired by Sitting Bull's personal guard, he formed his own Hoxie Hakakta, the last-born child society. He chose the younger sons of prominent families, men with something to prove, men less tied to the compromises of the elders. They were always making themselves greater, Eagle Elk said. More than 40 warriors joined. They met not in a grand lodge, but in Crazy Horse's own teepee, sharing simple meals and fierce loyalty. Crazy Horse held the village together, moving with the herds, organizing hunts, naming young Hump as a head Akachita. When Sitting Bull called for help against a prospecting expedition, Crazy Horse rode north. They fought hard, but the civilians were well armed, ruthless, and cunning, lacing abandoned provisions with strychnine, booby-trapping a corpse with a howitzer shell. Still, the Lakotas drove them out. But the victory was hollow. The herds were smaller than ever. Hunger gnawed at the people. Then came the worst news of all. In July 1874, Custer marched into the Black Hills with 1,000 men, journalists, and a photographer. On French Creek, the miners found what they were looking for: gold. Gold from the grassroots down, Custer wired to the nation. The Lakotas felt the earth shift beneath them. The Black Hills were the heart of their world, the place of visions, of creation, of the spirits. Now, the Americans wanted it. At first, the government ordered miners expelled, but the pressure was too great. The panic of 1873 had left thousands desperate. Gold fever swept the country. By winter, miners were slipping into the hills by the hundreds. Crazy Horse watched the crisis unfold with growing dread. Hunger pushed many Lakotas toward the agencies. Even some of his own people drifted south. By September, only 80 teepees remained with him near the Black Hills. He and Black Twin agreed to consider visiting the agency. Little Big Man carried their message: Crazy Horse will soon come in and draw his rations regularly hereafter. But then the buffalo returned, briefly like a blessing, and the northern Oglalas turned away from the agency once more. Through the winter of 1874 to 75, the crisis deepened. Miners poured into the Black Hills. The government prepared a new delegation to Washington. Red Cloud and Spotted Tail leaned toward selling the hills. The northern bands were horrified. Crazy Horse refused to come in. He had concluded to remain behind to guard the Black Hills. The northern Oglalas charged him and He-Dog with protecting Pahasapa, the heart of the earth. But the pressure mounted. The southern Cheyennes arrived with terrible news: massacres, starvation, the collapse of the old life on the southern plains. The northern tribes saw their own future in those stories. Sitting Bull called a great sun dance. He danced before the center pole, painted and trembling with vision. "We have them," he cried, lifting the calumets. "Wakantanka has given our enemies into our power." Crazy Horse listened. He believed in visions. He had lived by them. But he also knew the world was changing. When envoys from Red Cloud arrived, Crazy Horse was polite but firm. He would not go to the agency council. He would not sell the Black Hills, but he would not stop others from going. Whatever the headmen concluded to do, he said, they could and would do. Still, he protected the envoys when a faction plotted to kill them. Whoever attempts to murder these people will have to fight me too, he warned. The talks dragged on. The commissioners offered paltry sums, $400,000 a year to lease the hills, $6 million to buy them outright. The chiefs rejected the offer. The miners stayed. The government hardened. Crazy Horse climbed a butte near Powder River and fasted for 3 days. His vision was bleak. The buffalo scattered, the people starving, the Lakotas forced onto reservation charity. He came down, determined to resist. By fall, 15,000 miners were in the Black Hills, more than the entire Lakota Nation. In Washington, President Grant and his generals met in secret. They drafted a plan, forced the northern Lakotas onto the reservation by January 31st, 1876. If they refused, the army would march. The ultimatum arrived late, buried in winter storms. Crazy Horse's people said they would come in spring. The army did not wait. On March 17th, 1876, Crook's men attacked He-Dog's camp on Powder River. The Great Sioux War had begun. 40 miles away, Crazy Horse's village slept under the cold stars, unaware that the world was about to catch fire.
And that wraps up this episode of Chronicles of the Old West. This podcast is a dramatized retelling based on real historical events, people, and places. Every effort has been made to remain true to the spirit and facts of history. Certain liberties have been taken with pacing and dramatic structure for storytelling purposes. The core events, figures, and settings are drawn from documented accounts and research. Next time on Chronicles of the Old West, the world around Crazy Horse continues to tighten. The northern plains grow more volatile as new pressures rise from every direction: political, military, and spiritual. Old rivalries deepen, new alliances take shape. And as the United States pushes further into Lakota country, the choices facing the northern bands become sharper, heavier, and far more dangerous. Crazy Horse, still marked by loss and guided by vision, finds himself drawn into a struggle that will test not only his leadership, but the very future of his people. The winds are shifting, and the first sparks of a much larger fire are beginning to glow on the horizon. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Your feedback helps us bring more stories to life. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on Chronicles of the Old West.